And early on, it was, the idea of what would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? And I ask myself that question all the time. What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? And I've always felt like I can't fail. And it doesn't mean I don't succeed.
Welcome to Thrivin in the Wild. I'm Taylor Stern. I'm sharing what happens when you step into your vulnerability, face the hard things, celebrate your journey, and giving you your weekly reminder that no one has it all figured out. It's time to thrive. Let's go. Joining me today is none other than Chris Harrison, the host of the wildly successful Bachelor franchise since 2002. I met Chris back when I was just starting with the Dallas Cowboys, where we bonded over our mutual respect for the longtime voice of the Dallas Cowboys, Brad Sham, who he actually tells me inspired a very famous line he says on The Bachelor today. He's been such a gracious mentor to me throughout my career, and I'm excited for you to learn more about the man we've all watched on television for almost 2 decades. He's a household name now, but he shares with me the leap of faith he took in 1999 that forever changed his life. He also opens up about the unseen obstacles, how he survived the unexpected fame and thrived in the opportunities presented. Dare I say, this is the most dramatic conversation ever. Okay, you know I had to. All right, Chris, well, thank you so much for joining me. It is an absolute honor to have you on.
And it's good to almost be with you, my friend.
Yes, virtual, of course. 2020 is the fun time for that. But, I was researching different things and learning more about you, and I'm excited to learn more about you in this conversation. But I had no idea that all the way back in 1999, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you had a big choice to make. You were either going to go chase your dream as a sports broadcaster in Dallas, which is your hometown, or move to LA and start this horse racing network. Now, can you tell me more about how you ended up making this decision and really what was it like for you?
Yeah, there was a very popular country song out that year. It was Heads Carolina, Tails California. That was kind of my life. It was going to be, Heads Dallas, Tails California. My goal was to honestly end up back in Dallas. I'm born and raised in Dallas, went to Collins High School, all that stuff. And so honestly, I just wanted to move back home and be a sportscaster and ultimately maybe even be the voice of the Dallas Cowboys. That was like a dream job for me. And that was everything I did. I was kind of leaning towards it back in Dallas. And I finally made some inroads. I was having a great career in Oklahoma City and had ascended to the number 2 spot at KWTV, the CBS affiliate, and was doing really well there and doing weekend sports. But had a connection to Dallas because we kept going down there to cover the Cowboys, and had befriended Mike Ducey because he was at the CBS affiliate and he was new at the time. I think, did he come out of Iowa maybe?
He's a Midwestern guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a Midwestern guy. And I remember that it was kind of an interesting hire, not weird, but an interesting hire by them at the time. So he was kind of the new guy in town, and we met. And he knew I wanted to eventually get to Dallas, and he offered me a job. It was going to be a little bit of a step back, and I vividly remember him saying, it's only our number 3 spot, but it's your way into Dallas, and then you can quickly move your way up, if you want, through that. And I thought, this is everything I've ever dreamed of. And about, I don't know, a week after that, I got this bizarre call from California and said, hey, we're starting up a horse racing network. It's Fox, it's TV Guide, it's young, it's innovative, there's a lot of money, it's creative, and we want you to come out and audition. So I thought, what the heck? I'd never been to California in my life. I went and auditioned, and I got this job offer, and they were paying really good money for it. And I was young, married, didn't have kids, and thought, let's just go to California and surf for a minute. Let's go see the beach. It'll maybe last 6 weeks, 6 months, I don't know. And then we'll come back to Dallas and live out our life and be perfectly happy. But that was, I remember vividly sitting on my back porch in this green deck chair thinking, California, Dallas. And, Dallas was safe. Dallas was my home. Dallas was my dream. There was something about California that I thought, what if? Is there going to be that regret of not just taking a shot and trying this? And that's what I went with, obviously.
Wow. So the first time you went to California was to audition and then you just moved there.
I went to audition, and it was really funny because you're right. It was May of '99, and there was kind of a big sports story going on. OU had just fired their football coach, and they were hiring this assistant called Bob Stoops. And I ran out on like a Saturday or Sunday, a Saturday, I think, to audition real quick. And I had told my boss, Bill Tegans, who was my mentor at the time, and I let him know, and I let him know only. I said, "This is what I'm doing. I'm not going to do it behind your back." And he said, "That's fine." But Bob Stoops gets hired, decides to come on our show live, and they only wanted me to do that interview with him. And so I had to audition and then get back in time for Sunday night, our football show, to introduce and interview Bob Stoops. And ultimately, I did take that job. But yeah, I just remember sitting in my chair going, "What am I going to do?"
Wow. So what was the conversation like with Mike Ducey when you turned down that offer?
You know what's funny? I don't remember that conversation. I don't know.
You were just like, "Hey, I gotta go."
Yeah, no, because we never, obviously we never even got to we're negotiating money or anything like that. I think I just called and said, I may have even said, "I can't believe I'm giving up my dream because this is all I've ever wanted." And, knowing Mike, he was probably very humble and said, "Good luck to you. There's always a place for you if you want to come home." But, there's always people in your life that are, if you pay attention, are there to kind of give you a leg up. And I'm sure you can name a dozen. And there were so many in my life, whether Greg Blackwood and Bill Tegans at KWTV and so many others up there in Oklahoma City that took a chance on me and like helped me cut my teeth. Because Oklahoma City's it's a big city, small town. It's a top 50 market. And so, and obviously pretty serious about their football. So it was a tough place to break in. It wasn't like Beaumont, Texas, or Wichita Falls or somewhere like that where you could really, really make mistakes. I had to kind of come in and have my game together. So there was a little pressure breaking into a top 50 market like that. But there are people like Mike Ducey that, see some talent, see some sparkle in you, and they want to give you that shot.
Yeah, those are the best types of people. I would have loved to seen what you would have been like as Brad Sham. I think you could have done it.
Well, it's funny. So if you ever watch my shows, and I ever do a live broadcast, I will end my show the same way every time. And that is, for everyone who's been a part of this one, I'm Chris Harrison. Good night, everybody. And that came from Dale Hansen and Brad Sham.
Wow.
That's how. So when I was a kid growing up in Dallas, we would always turn down the TV and we would always listen to the radio. We would always listen to Brad Sham and Dale Hansen. And Vern Lundquist was around back then. But I always listened to the end of the game. And it was, and he would always end it the same way for everyone who's been a part of this one. And I thought, what a just classy way to end the show. It just kind of threw all the light towards your crew and towards the people that worked their butt off. I don't know. I just thought it was a nice tip of the cap to everyone around you. So as an homage to everyone back home, I stole that, borrowed it, and I've used it. And I've talked to Brad and Dale Hansen about that.
That is so funny. See, I knew Brad would end up tied in with The Bachelor somehow. That's just him. That is Brad.
Brad Sham was someone I very much looked up to. His voice, his cadence, his professionalism. One thing about Brad Sham that I've always admired, he's never the story. And my boss, my mentor, Bill Tegans always said, you're not the story. Get over yourself. And it's definitely helped me throughout my Bachelor years. I'm not the story on The Bachelor. It's always about the Bachelor, the Bachelorette, or whatever the story is we're telling that day. And that was the best sportscasting and newscasting advice I ever got, because I see so many reporters that try to make themselves the story and try to make themselves funny or whatever. And it's, you're not the story. If you're doing a good job, trust me, you're going to be noticed. And Brad Sham, from the time I was a kid listening to him, I just thought, man, this guy just paints a picture, kind of like Vince Scully, but obviously Brad doesn't wax as poetically as Vince Scully does, but he does paint a picture just as well. And the great ones do.
Yeah, and I love that you touch on that with The Bachelor, because your longevity. And I was going to get to that later, but I think this is a good segue tie into that. Now 20 years, Brad Sham's been with the Cowboys for 42. There's got to be some tie there. Do you think, like you said, that it has helped you in the Bachelor years, but now you're looking at 2 decades almost? Would you have thought that?
Well, and I think some other things that come through, Taylor, are your work ethic and loyalty. and dedication to something. And I think, again, those are traits we kind of use as punchlines now. But they're not. That's what keeps you around. That's what gives you longevity. That's why Brad Sham is around. Brad Sham's not around, because there's only one reason. A, he's good. B, he works his butt off. He's at every training camp. He's at every practice. He's still doing his homework. If Brad Sham mails it in next season, no one's going to know, but he doesn't. And that's the difference, because he would know. And just that one tick down of just not being there and having your A game would drive him crazy. And that's what the great ones have. And that's hopefully what's instilled in me. And I thank God, and I'm glad I was born and raised in Texas, because that's where that's from. It's watching these people and watching their work ethic and being raised the right way, not only in your home, but also in my workplace, and cutting my teeth in local news and having to grind out stories and chase down, all the different stories and breaking news and all that. That's where it comes from. And so nothing's taken for granted. I appreciate and I'm grateful for my job.
Yeah, that comes across very clearly. Now, going back, you chose the horse racing network. Is there a moment when you realized this risk was worth it?
I don't know. I'm still waiting to see how this is going to pay off. It was funny. I got out here and I was so green, Taylor. I knew the world of sportscasting a little bit, but there was no one in my family in this business. I got to college. I played soccer. Through soccer, I found sportscasting. And as soon as I did it, I just loved it. I fell in love with broadcasting. It was my passion. It just found me, and I don't do drugs. I never have, but that was my drug. I couldn't get enough of it. I was a station rat. You hear about gym rats? I was a station rat. I couldn't be at the station enough. I was working for free on Friday nights doing the Friday night football show, and then would sleep on the floor of the office and get up and do the 6 to 8 o'clock sportscast. That was my first gig, was the Saturday morning show. And you couldn't tear me away. I loved it. And so, that to me is the difference maker. And when I moved to LA, I took on this job, and I had never been to Los Angeles. I didn't know what an agent was. I remember I went on an audition because there was no exclusivity at this horse racing network, and the horse racing network was fun. I was doing good, but it didn't take up a lot of my time. So I started going on auditions for movies and television shows. And I think because I was fresh meat and a new face, and I had a little talent, they started booking me on stuff. And I got a call back on my first audition. And I got so excited, I called my agent. I said, "It's great. I got a call back." And she's like, "Super." And I go, "What's a callback?" And they're like, "You're an idiot." And so I honestly, I didn't know what a callback was, how you had to go back and audition again, and they would narrow it down. But I started doing some movies like Showtime with Robert De Niro and Eddie Murphy. I did Bounce with Gwen Affleck and Gwyneth Paltrow. Ben Affleck and Gwyneth Paltrow. Did a couple of other like TV shows, Sabrina the Teenage Witch and other stuff. And it was fun. I was just goofing around. I never wanted to be an actor. I don't have the patience. But it was a wild ride. And I just thought, you know what? Why not? Why not me? And I'd walk into an audition. And again, my sports background, growing up in Texas and grinding it out, I would walk into a room with 30, 40, 50 people gunning for the same job. And I thought, why not me? Someone's got to get in this room. Might as well be me. What the hell? And so that was kind of the mentality. It was just, I think ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, a lot of people have always asked me that when I was working for the Cowboys. They're like, "How did you get this job?" And I grew up in New Mexico, which we didn't have any pro sports or anything like that. But I remember thinking the same thing. Why not? And I feel like that is a learned trait. Do you think that was instilled in you in childhood? I know you've mentioned just growing up in Texas, but do you remember maybe who kind of instilled that confidence in you?
For sure, my parents. I mean, I am very fortunate. I come from a very big family where I had a lot of people to answer to. And that's why, if people say you're grounded now, that's why I still answer to everybody. My mom, my dad, my older brother. I had grandparents and uncles and cousins, and I was the youngest of 7 grandkids. And so I got my butt kicked a lot. I was humbled a lot. And so it wasn't far from me to stay humble. And I'll never forget one of my first big gigs. I was hosting Miss America. And at the time, it was early on in my Bachelor career, and it was a 3-hour live show for ABC. And it was a nice feather in my cap to try and expand the portfolio. And I got done with the show, and I was in this beautiful suite in Atlantic City. It was like the Rain Man suite. I was really feeling it, man. My head was the size of Atlantic City. And my brother calls, And I'm like, oh, he must have seen the show. He's going to tell me I did a great job. And we're talking and talking. And he's like, oh, I forgot. He's like, I caught the biggest bass yesterday. He's like, you wouldn't believe it. And I'm like, there you go, man. Like, just not. And he's like, by the way, where are you? I was like, oh, I'm in Atlantic City. I just hosted Miss America. He's like, cool. Anyway, we're going to see you this weekend. I was just like,
back to my bass.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. So yeah, I had a lot of people. And, my parents, especially my mom, gave me this amazing gift. And early on, it was, the idea of what would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail?
Wow.
And I asked myself that question all the time. What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? And I've always felt like I can't fail. And it doesn't mean I don't succeed. I've struck out. I've missed jobs. I've been fired. I've done it all. Trust me, I've fallen on my face. But I have this feeling like I cannot fail. And that is just this thing that guides me through my job. And I always say the worst stench in the world is desperation. Nothing smells worse than desperation. And if you go into an audition and you're like, oh my God, I need this job. My mortgage is on the line. Everything's on the line. Even if it is, you can't smell like desperation.
You have
Put
to
on
fake
some different cologne.
Yes. Okay. So then 3 years later, you moved to LA and then you get the Bachelor job. How did that come to be? Was that just from one of your random auditions after kind of, going and doing these different TV shows?
Honestly, I did less to get that job than I did to get my first job at Brahms when I was a kid in Dallas. I was, there's always these lists in LA. You're on the list. And so my agent said I was on the list for this reality show, which, by the way, who knew? Nothing existed.
Reality was so young then.
Right. Well, it wasn't even, Survivor wasn't even on the air yet. So Survivor was first, and they were about 6 months ahead of us. So Survivor wasn't even on the air yet. It was about to start. And so it wasn't even a thing. And so this list went on for a year. And what was funny is I did things, and this is a great maybe lesson that I've taken is I always just did stuff. And I never worry about the money, and I don't worry about the title. I worry about, does it make me happy? Do I think it'll get me one step closer to whatever my ultimate goal will be? And then I know that money, prestige, title, all that BS will take care of itself. And so I did a lot of free stuff. And, whether I was an intern back in Oklahoma City, whatever it was, I just wanted to be near what I thought would get me to the next level. And when I was in LA, I had some friends that said, hey, I was a good host. They knew I could host. They would call me and say, hey, would you come just host this little test pilot we're doing? We want someone who's not begging for the job. We just want someone to come in and do a solid job and get out of the way. So I did stuff like that for my friends that were trying to create and produce television. One of those shows ended up in front of Telepictures. Telepictures didn't buy the show, but they said, who's that host? We're looking for a guy for this other job. And luckily, again, I had done this for free. And my buddy said, hey, he's this Texas boy. He's married. He has a kid on the way, and he's a good guy. And they were looking for the guy next door. And so it didn't get me the Bachelor, but it moved me up to that top level of people they were looking for. And then they called me in for a meeting. And the meeting was a disaster. It went horribly wrong. And I got called back later. They actually offered the job to somebody else. My boss and I hated each other. But he called me back and we had a second meeting. Somehow that went better. And they gave me the job.
And then now we're looking at, what season is this? 400? I mean,
Yeah, 19 years. My son is a freshman at TCU. He was 6 weeks old when I got the job. So
wow.
the show is now a freshman at TCU. That's how long the show's been going.
Yeah, that's how you can kind of classify it. And I'm glad you bring that up because this is the first season where we are going to see you balance this personal and professional life.
Yeah, I mean, I've always, when people always ask me what's your favorite thing about the show or things you remember, it's, there are TV things that have been impressionable, but it's really my life. Again, I was married. Both my kids were kind of born. My son was born when I got the job. So that was kind of that moment. And then a few years later, Trista was about to be married. And then we were ending up Meredith's season of The Bachelorette, and my wife was in labor. And so Taylor, my daughter, was born. Taylor. And so they've traveled with me. They lived in Italy and they've been to Paris and they've been all around the world with me. And so thinking of my kids as little kids hanging on the Eiffel Tower or swimming with sharks in Bora Bora, all these crazy things they've done, those are the things I remember. And now, we were in the middle of quarantine and my son's going to college. There's zero chance I'm missing the opportunity of taking my son to college. And luckily, and it wasn't going to be an issue with Claire's season of The Bachelorette. That was long over. Not going to be a problem. But then the pandemic hits. We have to slide production. We're in the bubble. You can't leave. And so we had to figure it out. And luckily, again, hard work, dedication, loyalty, trust with these people, having worked with them for 19 years, it wasn't a big deal. We made a big deal out of it, and everyone else did on the internet, but we clearly knew what was coming, and they weren't about to get in the way of me taking my son to college, and I did so.
I'm glad you bring up the internet because, I mean, I've been loving your Twitter lately. Are you doing this yourself?
I do it all myself. I probably should.
So fun.
You should see what I write and then delete.
Your saved drafts?
I delete it. So what I feel, and you know me well enough. We've been friends for, God, it's probably sadly almost like a decade now.
My career
I feel
is
like
a
you're
first
still
grader.
I still feel like you're the young woman that's just starting out with the Cowboys, and I'm just meeting you at training camp. But sadly, that was probably like 10 or 12 years ago.
You have such a good memory.
It's funny how people stay in your life like that. But it's, I forget what I was even talking about. What were we talking about?
We were talking about the internet and how you've just mastered your Twitter account.
So people will troll me, people will say whatever, but you've known me for a long time, and I'm a ginormous smartass. I have a quick wit, and it often gets me in trouble on the internet because things that don't translate well, especially now in this world, is the internet and texting. But I still will write really just salty, quick, and then I'm like, no. And if it's remotely controversial, because if it's controversial at all, it's just gonna go sideways, and then you end up explaining or whatever, and then you're Troy Aikman and Joe Buck, and you're apologizing for a joke, and it's all silly. And we're in a culture now where, heaven forbid, you make something funny or remotely comedic, because God knows we need it right now.
We do. But I just love the fact, because do trolls get to you, or do you just wipe it off?
No, I mean, luckily, I've ascended over 30 years of doing this to get to where I am. I feel bad. Actually, I have a genuine empathy for, Colton and Hannah and Rachel, all these people that get on The Bachelor or Bachelorette, and you come from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And look, she had a little bit, but essentially you're kind of nobody. And then the next day you're on Jimmy Kimmel Live and Ryan and Kelly, and you're a thing, and everyone's in your business. And so that kind of attention immediately, it's like you're shot out of a cannon, and there's nothing that's prepared you or your skin to handle that kind of a beating. And I have a thick skin, but they don't know that yet. So I'm fine with it. People can say whatever they want. Sometimes it gets a little personal. Sometimes I will just stop somebody in their tracks, the proverbial just go up and punch them in the face on the schoolyard. But for the most part, I just let it go, because it's also the vocal minority. You have to realize most people aren't on social media. They don't care. So you're talking to the vocal minority that are just screaming the loudest. And if you go, and I always find it interesting to click and see who they are,
Yeah.
Typically they have like 4 followers, and it's a fake account, and they're just trying to get to you. But if it's a real account, I would say 90% of the time it's loving mother, Christian, just trying to be my best version. It's like, I'm like, that's who it usually is. That's
car selfie. There's always a car 100%. Selfie.
Yeah.
It's like, and they have the sunglasses on, and it looks like they put the camera up here. It's every time. You are exactly correct. And it's like, really, that's how I used to feel when I would get, comments about like Cowboys Inside, and then you'd go in and be like, proud girl dad. And I'd be like, are you? Do you talk to your daughter this way?
Yeah. And, and I always tell everybody, either whether you're on the show or whatever, it's so easy to sit on the sidelines and tell somebody they're not going to make it. It's so easy to sit on the sidelines in the comfort of your own home and rip somebody apart. It's so safe for you. And I have never gotten anything from being that person. I am that person that wants to be on the tightrope. I want to fall on my face. I want to walk without a net and just see what happens. I love that feeling. And it takes me back to sports. When I was playing college sports, it's like you win, you lose, you prepare for something, you work hard. And trust me, I have done television shows I thought were going to be a smash hit, and they weren't. And if you yell at me and tell me I was a huge failure, you're right. Great, you got me. But guess what? I'm going to go try 10 other things, and 4 of them might succeed. I don't know, maybe they all fail, but I don't know, like, God bless you if you're that person that, it makes you feel better to sit on the couch and tell someone that they suck, tell someone you could do better. I try to be careful even when I'm talking about sports, because sports is a lot like what I do. It's on TV. And Jason Garrett was a big kind of target for a while with the Cowboys of like, he sucks, get him out of here. And I'm like, if you were staring Jason Garrett in the face, if you had to shake his hand and talk to him, and by the way, a brilliant man and an unbelievably kind soul. Who was the first man on the field when Zeke got hurt the other day? It was Jason Garrett. He's an unbelievable man. Was he the right fit essentially at the end of the day? Maybe not, but they'll figure that out. It's just so easy to tell somebody they suck, or after someone throws 4 interceptions, you're going to rip on a college kid who's 18 years old. It just have a little perspective and a little grace and a little patience.
Yeah, that's so true. The sports, I think people don't realize how much that has really molded your career, because when you can go back to sports, there's so many lessons you can learn that you learn in soccer, from broadcasting. I mean, it's always tied in. And that's what I wish more people realize, is that sports really is the great equalizer.
It is. And I found one other one, and I wasn't a part of this, but I've seen it now in my business is theater. The world of theater is brutal and it's competitive and it's tough. And so often I see our producers and young, just like there were people that gave me a leg up when I was a kid. I'm no longer that kid anymore. But now, luckily, I am the man that gets to do that for young men and women. And I try to find these diamonds in the rough. And it's funny. It's real easy to spot. It's real easy to spot talent. I thought, how did people see me when I was a kid coming up in this business? And it must have been so obvious. First of all, I was there 24/7. You couldn't get me away. I was begging for help. I was it's easy to see when there's real raw talent that will show up, shut up, do your job, swallow your pride. I don't care that you went to Syracuse and graduated with a mass comm degree, just like Bob Costas did. That's awesome. Now go empty the trash can and drive this van all night until 5 a.m. with a smile on your face. That's what you got to do. And you got to earn your stripes. And a lot of people come out, and now that in this world of Instagram and all that, they want to just be instant millionaires, Instagram this, and that's all they care about is their clout and their followers and the money. And that's not how it's achieved. That's not how the great ones actually get it. And I have nothing against the Kardashians, but I think there is a culture that came out of that where people thought, oh, well, if I just get shown to be doing something crazy, that will translate. But let me let you know a secret. You will not find a group of harder hustlers than the Kardashians. What they make look easy, they are working their asses off. I know Chris very well, and I know some of the other daughters very, okay. And they work so unbelievably hard. Their hustle is 100%. So you may not see that, but just know it's there.
Yeah, Chris, that reminds me exactly of something that Jason Witten always said. He always said the secret is in the dirt. And you know that, being around him as much as you were. I mean, Jason Witten was the kind of guy that you just see on Sunday and he does everything correctly, but no one sees the 95%. And that's,
Right.
that is such an accurate statement, because everyone nowadays, especially in the social media culture, just think, okay, I'm going to get on The Bachelor and Bachelorette, and then I'm going to have X, Y, and Z, and this is the carpet that lays out in front of me. And I love that you call a lot of that the BS, because I think that is so accurate.
Well, it's funny. I mean, first of all, Jason Witten is a great example because, and this is no slight against him, but I think he would agree. Is he the fastest? No. Is he the best? No. Did he work the hardest and put in the effort and make it happen? He worked with the tools he had, and it turned into a Hall of Fame career. That is, I mean, Jerry Rice could be the same way. I'm like, he wasn't the biggest or fastest dude in the world, but I guarantee you he outworked everybody. And when people see me on The Bachelor, they're like, oh man, you're so lucky you got that job. And I'm like, you're seeing the 5% of the iceberg, man. You didn't see the 30 years that led up to this. And I have a weird show where every season I bring on about 25 to 30 people that just want my job and think they can do it. And maybe some of them can, but it is funny that is this culture now. And I notice those young men and women that come in with the grind, with the hunger, and they really fire, and they move up quickly. And the ones that don't just kind of drift away, and I never see them again.
Yeah, there's many people like that out there. Okay, now something that people forget about you is that you're multidimensional. And I always love, learning about the new businesses you're part of. What are some of your other passions that you have found in your professional career?
That's funny you mentioned, because I'm about to launch something really cool, and maybe I'll just announce it. I'll just announce it right here.
Yay! I like that.
So one of the cool things about this, I've been a big fan of all businesses and trying to dive into businesses. And, I've tried to use this opportunity and the gifts that I've been given, whether it's financial or just a little celebrity and whatever, to get into some of these different businesses. I did a book years ago, had no idea about the literary business. And again, I was so scared to death, and I love being scared because I'm like, people are going to read what I'm writing, including sex scenes. I might be the laughing stock of the world. I was so scared. It'd be like singing the national anthem. Like, I don't do this, but I just wanted to throw it out there into the world, and you feel kind of naked, and you're like,
Let's go.
It was great. And I did a collaboration with Seagram's, which was awesome, the Tropical Rosé. But I have this amazing collaboration coming up, and it's with this amazing company called Manly Bands. And Manly Bands was created. It's a mom and pop organization, a company that was started, and it is a men's wedding rings.
Wow.
And it doesn't just have to be wedding rings, but very, very cool wedding rings. And the idea was, no offense, ladies, but look, the wedding's all about you, and that's great. And as far as rings go, you have a bajillion types of rings you can choose. And for guys, it was really like very basic of what kind of was like silver, gold, whatever. And that was about it.
So that's exactly it. Like silver, gold, graphite sometimes if you're getting crazy.
And so this husband and wife were getting married, and they thought, there's no options for him. He's a big guy. He's kind of country. He has this different personality. Let's create a different ring. And they created a company just based on tons and tons of different kinds of rings, different styles, different types, different materials. Some have kind of wood in them. So I have not only partnered with this company, but I have my own ring line coming out. It actually launches next week. I think Tuesday. It's going to come out right before The Bachelor. And there's the Chris Harrison collection. It's a line of wedding rings. And if you don't like mine, you can go find 1,000 other ones on Manly Bands. But I picked this collection, designed the rings, named the rings. You're going to see some nods to Dallas. There's the Star. There's Austin. There's the Strait, which has a little country to it. Obviously, a nod to George Strait. So there's a lot of rings that I designed, and they're all personal. And it's a really cool collaboration. And again, that only happens because of, I know, The Bachelor and working hard. But it's also putting yourself out there and taking these chances and daring to be great. And if it fails, great. People can yell at me on Twitter and tell me I suck, but I love taking these crazy flyers and just seeing if it'll work. And this, I think, is just a genius extension of my brand. It's a bunch of men and women who watch the show are getting married, and I don't see why not. And I love it. I have 10 of them here. I'm actually in the bubble. I don't know if I told you, I'm in the bubble shooting The Bachelor right now. So
I didn't know that.
Lockdown. Yeah. So I'm out here on the East, and it's a little dreary and cold, but I'm shooting The Bachelor. So so look for go to manlybands.com and check it out.
I will. And I love just seeing how fired up you get talking about that, because it's so genuine, and it does
get excited about stuff.
You do. And when it makes so much sense, because you've been around how many people who are in this stage where they're about to get engaged, and rings are very important.
Well, the cool thing is too, my thought was, you can walk through and there will be a ring for you.
Yeah.
I just did a giveaway for this couple the other day, and this guy lives in Utah, because they had to pick the celebrity, and if they did, and if people were trying to guess, I was blacked out, shadowed out, so you couldn't see who it was, and they had to guess. And if you did, you got a free ring. And this guy goes, I'm in the Army National Guard, I'm a patriot, I'm this. I'm like, you're going to go find a ring that just says you, and my dilemma is, when I look at these rings, I think I may have several. Because sometimes I just want to be casual, and I wear my country ring. I go out at night, and there is one with diamonds. There's one that's just black zirconium that's really cool. It would look awesome with a tuxedo. So I think, why not have several wedding rings and then put on according to your mood? It's kind of like women. Sometimes you wear your ring. Sometimes you wear your band. Sometimes, you go to the gym. You want to wear something modest. So I think the future is going to have multiple rings.
Yeah, well, that makes complete sense. And if, I look at my parents who are now celebrating 31 years, which is just crazy. And last year they got them, they got some special rings. And my dad, I actually noticed it has all of this turquoise and different things. And I go, well, that's a little bit unique. And he goes, well, why not? It's been 30 years. Let's flare it up. So
but do you want to look at the turquoise every day? Maybe not.
I don't. Well, And he's a pilot, so sometimes he has to wear,
Oh, yeah.
the plastic. So I think this is a brilliant idea. I'm so excited for you.
It's funny you say that. So our rings also come with it's not this kind of rubberized,
Yeah.
perfect material that so you can wear it like pilots or gym or whatever. So you can keep a ring on, but you're not going to hurt yourself and it's going to be safe. So yeah, it's really
I'm
cool.
stoked about this. All right, well, something else that I really loved that you came out and talked about this summer, because we know 2020, you were just talking about it, it's super challenging. And
Yeah.
I was really excited to see that you were involved with I believe it's AIM Youth Mental Health. And which I loved so much about that, and I started researching after I saw your tweet. And I'm just curious, how did you get involved and why was it so important?
Again, it's funny if you surround yourself with good people and you keep doing, putting yourself out there
Yeah.
at events and stuff like that. First and foremost, I got involved with the Grant Halliburton Foundation, which is
Yeah.
actually based out of Dallas, Texas. Vanita Halliburton is my dear friend. She's kind of like a second mom to me. Her son Grant committed suicide, had mental health problems his whole life, and there was nothing in a lot of places there is nothing for young people, for kids, young adults that suffer from mental health and are suicidal. It is a disease, and it's something that even saying it, a lot of people are like, "Oh, suicide." You whisper it, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that needs to be whispered. It's something like cancer or anything else that needs to be talked about. It is a disease, and so I got involved with the Grant Halliburton Foundation in Dallas because it's near and dear to my heart. They are family to me, and I support them, and I do a lot of stuff with the Halliburton Foundation. And then I started playing in the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro Am, and
Yeah.
I met this wonderful man named Steve John. It's a golf tournament in Pebble Beach, and Steve John is connected to this new organization called AIM. And their thing is, could we figure out a cure for the disease that is mental health
Mhm.
issues and mental illness? And it's kind of interesting because you think, well, what do you mean a cure? Well, clearly it's a disease. Therefore, there are things in our brain that are causing this. Could we figure out and step all the way back and keep this from happening in the first place? And so I love that I'm kind of celebrating and supporting the Halliburton Foundation, which is taking care of those that already are fighting this. Because a lot of young men and women, especially now in 2020, suicide rates are up, depression is up, anxiety is up. And we have a real issue on our hands. And there wasn't a place for these people to go. And they would go to the same place where adults go. And these kids are going, oh my God, I'm looking at a 50-year-old. Is that me in 30 years? I'm still doing this.
The
And it would
fear.
make them more depressed, and it would compound what they were already going through. And so the Halliburton Foundation is about servicing these young people and helping just them before it gets too late. And then AIM, the AIM Gala up in the Monterey Peninsula, is working with doctors and working with researchers and trying to get to the root of what is mental illness. Can we fix this? Can we cure it before it gets to the suicidal stage? And so I'm kind of working both ends right now, and I want both of them to be successful. And my goal is that AIM is successful and the Halliburton Foundation doesn't have to be there anymore because we figured this thing out. Like, we need
Yeah.
to be screaming this. We need to be talking about it. You need to be talking to your kids because, like you said, you could win a bowl game and be on top of the world seemingly, and be so depressed and so mentally ill and want to take your own life. And you don't see it often. And so you've got to have communication. You've got to talk to your kids. You've got to let them know there's an outlet. It can't be taboo. Your kids have to feel free to have these conversations and reach out to you, a friend, a teacher, a pastor, a rabbi, whoever. It doesn't matter, but they got to be able to speak, and it has to be okay.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for doing that, Chris, because truth be told, that is something I know we're going to see more and more of. 2020 might just be
Yeah.
a more glimpse, and it might just be more accepted because more people are dealing with it. But with social media and all of the different things that the challenges that young people are facing, I really appreciate your work in that.
Social
Okay.
media, beyond the bowling, social media just makes us more isolated. It's something
Oh,
that should
yeah.
bring us together, but all it does is these young girls. I have a young daughter, and she just, now she's sitting in a room because she can Zoom, and you're just looking at what you don't have and looking who you aren't with and the parties you aren't at, and then there's a cyberbullying and all that on top of it. So yeah, we have a real mess on our hands coming out of this COVID thing. We have a real mess with what's going on with the youth, and my daughter included. My daughter's a junior in high school, and she's even having struggles, and so we're
1000%.
talking about it and we're dealing with it. And she's an amazing young woman who really has a good head on her shoulders. But, when you just turn your computer off and you're just sitting in your room every day, there's damage. These kids are in jail. And I'm not blaming any politicians. I get it. We have a crisis. We have a pandemic, and we have to take care of that. But man, there's a flip side of this coin that there's a bill coming due that we're going to have to pay.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate what you said. Your daughter is an amazing young woman, but I think that people forget that just because if you're a great person, that mental health is going to almost go over you.
Yeah.
No, it takes no mercy. There's no discrimination. And it is something that everyone will face in some way or another. And I think that's why I wanted to have this podcast, is that we greet these moments with grace and with understanding, and knowing that we can get through this and we can do hard things. So
we're living in such a crazy time. And
we are.
Whether it's pandemic, politics, obviously with the election coming up and all that. And I look at what's going on around the country, and I don't care what side you're on. I wish there was a space to talk, a space to have grace, a space to have some understanding and debate and conversation with people, and not just try to shout somebody down, not just cancel somebody. Canceling is the easy way out. It's the easy thing to do. Giving someone the grace and the presence and the attention and time to understand them, see where they're coming from, and try and have dialogue. That's tough. That's the difficult part. It's just such a toxic place right now, and I hate seeing this for my kids, even for myself. But I'm older and I'm kind of set in my ways, and I'm okay. But I just watch the way my kids are growing up and having these discussions about what's going on. And it's not frightening. I think we're okay. We still live in the best country in the world. People are still, the dream is still to come to America. And I know, half the people here would try to tell you that's not the case, but it's still the best place in the world to be. But man, we all just need to take a step back and just give each other a little space right now.
Well, yeah. And, the last question I had for you actually touches on cancel culture, not in that necessarily the way that you were saying it, because I think the unfortunate part of cancel culture is what you mentioned, that there's no understanding of growth. And my last question was for you, if you could go back to your 18-year-old self and give yourself some advice, or what would you just say to your 18-year-old self? But think about how much you have changed and grown and become such a different and unique person from that time. You were still then, but it's just redefining your life throughout all of these different things. And so, yeah, cancel culture is just a bad situation. But 18-year-old Chris, what would you say?
Wow. Let's see. A few things. Have the guts to go up and ask Christina out.
Christina, she's still out there. No, you got Lauren. We love Lauren.
No,
we love Lauren.
I do. No, but knowing, it's funny, if I could go back and say, hey, don't worry, man, The Bachelor is going to be on for 20 years. You can relax a little bit. But I, having this feeling like there's somebody chasing me and feeling like it could all go away tomorrow is this drive and this hunger. And I know that there are other big successful people in this world, all other businesses that have that same feeling of you never feel like you made it. You never feel like you're on top. You always just feel like, what's next? I got to keep going. The race isn't over. And I think that hunger has always been with me. I think there are times when I probably could have stepped back and just relaxed a little bit more. But I appreciate having that hustle my whole life. But going back to cancel culture, it is interesting because I did things and probably said things when I was 18 that I'm glad it's not on camera. The world has changed. We've been educated, and why we gave ourselves this opportunity to grow and be educated for so long, and then now it's just stopped. And for some reason, whether it's the Me Too movement, whether it's Black Lives Matter, no matter what it is, I appreciate what you're trying to accomplish, but you have to give people the opportunity to be educated. If you just draw a line in the sand and say everything in front of this line, oh, and by the way, everything behind this line needs to add up to this, you're fighting an impossible fight. That is never going to happen. The people from the 1940s and 1950s and 1960s are not going to be woke compared to what you need in 2020. It's just not going to happen. My great-great-grandfather was not a woke guy. And so you have to give people grace of the past and grace and understanding to grow and educate to where we want to be. And
Yeah.
that is what's lacking right now. Not lacking from everybody. Look, I think there's a lot of people like me that are in the middle. Have a little grace and understanding before you reach down and grab your phone and safely tweet something.
Well, I think it goes back to actually what you mentioned earlier is this easy way out. Everybody wants the easy way out, and cancel culture is an easy way out. Okay, this person's gone by,
Yeah.
and it's not like that. And so many people who want a full, satisfying, purposeful life, they need to realize it's not easy, but you can do the hard things and you can put yourself in those
Well,
situations.
it goes
So
back to business. If
yeah,
it were easy, everyone would be doing it.
yeah,
And let me tell you what's not easy: doing the work
yeah,
and having that. Standing in front of somebody who you vehemently disagree with, and what they believe in. It hurts so bad it makes you sick. But having the grace to swallow your feelings and your pride for a second and listen and try and have a conversation is the most powerful thing. And it's hard work to do. It's so easy to try and scream somebody down or light something on fire or do whatever. I get it. Like, there's a lot of anger out there, and I don't disagree with it. I get why there's anger out there. You're deserving of that anger.
yeah,
But this other person is probably deserving of having their feelings too. And we got to bring everybody together and bring it along, or else what? We're just, these warring factions. That doesn't do
yeah.
anybody. And so it'll be interesting to see, how we come out of this. And there's again, a lot of issues, and it'll be hopefully thought of and decided upon by much smarter people than you and I. But it will take people like you and I just the same to, have that empathy and to have that grace and to have that understanding.
It's hard, but you mentioned one thing, and I think this is ultimately the peak of you. If it was easy, everyone would be Chris Harrison, and it is not easy. So that's why there aren't many yous out
We
there.
just try to make it look easy, Taylor.
Yes, you make it look easy. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I truly, truly appreciate this, and this is just such an awesome conversation. I could talk to you for hours.
Well, I love you to death, and
Thank
I've
you.
really loved watching you grow.
Thank you.
You're such an amazing young woman, and I've watched you take these steps all the way up. And it's an honor for me and a lot of pride to be on your show. So keep doing what you're doing, keep grinding, and I'm very proud of you.
Hi. Are you loving the show? Go find that little subscribe button on your podcast app. This will ensure you won't miss a single episode. Until next time.